Joining me now to talk more about the debt debate is Democratic Congressman Bill Owens. Congressman, thanks for your time. It's great to see you.
Thanks for having us.
So, okay, now we have these dueling plans, one by Speaker Boehner, the other by Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid. Boehner, it seems, is scrambling to get his own conference to support his two-step plan. Do you think there's any way any Democrats could come across the aisle and vote for it?
I think it's highly unlikely. I've been someone who's talked about compromise quite a bit. I usually play pretty much in the middle on many issues. This is very troubling to me, how partisan this is, and really how unrealistic the proposal is that's being made from the other side of the aisle. I'm looking forward to seeing something come out of the Senate which we can vote on that will achieve the goals that I think are important, which need to focus on raising the debt ceiling, but that has to be connected to spending cuts. My preference would be to see some additional revenue, but it doesn't appear that either plan currently has that contained in it.
Right. So what is it exactly about the Boehner plan that you find unpalatable?
Well, there's a couple of pieces of it. One, I unfortunately at this point don't know precisely where the cuts are in either plan,
right. So
that's problematic to me. The other piece is that it's tied to the balanced budget amendment, which I think is really a non-starter. It's bad public policy. It's not something that we can do and effectively run the government.
Yeah, I mean, so it seems to me that you would be willing to vote yes on Harry Reid's plan. Like you said, though, light on details, although it seems that the president prefers that particular proposal.
Well, I think conceptually we do for a number of reasons. One of the great concerns we all have is creating more market uncertainty.
Sure.
I think one of the things that's been left out of this debate is what's the impact to the people in Plattsburgh, the people in Watertown, the people in Cazenovia. If we don't act, people are going to see their interest rates go up on their credit cards, on car loans, on their business loans, and mortgages will become more expensive. These are the realities on the ground that are not being faced. People are kind of framing this discussion as if it's only happening in Washington and it's only going to impact the federal expenses, and that's simply not accurate. It's going to hit us all.
Well, but Congressman, don't you think some of that is being created by the fact that that Wall Street hasn't yet panicked? In other words, it seems that people are saying, this is just your usual political showdown in Washington, and not taking it seriously. The markets are not yet taking it seriously. There are stories coming out now that they're preparing, but no one really believes you're actually going to get there.
Well, I think that all of us felt several weeks ago that we were going to have this resolved by this time.
Right.
That's not happened. I think each day that this ticks along, it increases the likelihood that some event, not necessarily even occurring in the United States, but we could have some other worldwide event which could tip the scales and push us over. This is not a position we want to be in or should be in.
So what do you mean by that? For example, we just saw Greece actually get bailed out for a second time, right? So what if Italy or some other country that seems to be tipping on the edge there goes over? Could that somehow push things in the U.S. into chaos while you're in this delicate moment of trying to get a deal before August 2nd?
Well, that's clearly what the fear is. We could also have something like occurred in Japan, a tsunami followed by, a meltdown in a nuclear power plant.
A natural disaster.
There could be any number of a natural disaster. We could have another financial disaster. All of these things, when you're in a delicate situation, you have to be very careful of. And I don't think that we're acting responsibly here in Washington in focusing on compromise and getting this done.
Yeah, you've actually been talking about the debt ceiling and the importance of getting the national debt down since at least the spring of 2010. I mean, I'm just looking at a story here about legislation. At the time, you had no co-sponsors, actually, but you've been talking about this for a while. Do you think that your colleagues on both sides of the aisle are actually really ideologically opposed here? Some of those conservatives digging in, for example, some of the Democrats who say unless there's taxes on the rich, forget it? Or is this really about politics with an eye towards 2012?
Well, truthfully, I think it's a mixture of both. But I will say that I think there are people who ideologically are opposed on the right and the left, and it's really going to take those of us in the middle to bring this to closure.
So what are you doing about that? Are you lobbying your fellow Congress members?
I talk to as many people as I can every day about where we're going, how we're going to get there, and when we see a proposal that comes back that's close to the middle, we need to grab that ring and run with it. And I'm looking to many of the more moderate folks in both caucuses to do that.
Yeah, fewer and fewer of you moderates around these days, I got to say. You know, I was wondering, you know, the president said last night that he wanted the American people to call and contact their members of Congress, and subsequently people actually took him up on it and crashed a bunch of websites. Was yours one of them?
No, we did not receive, I don't think, as many calls as and other contacts as our colleagues did. And I think part of that's because I've been very consistent for many months about wanting to see, you know, cuts made, revenue increased, and then the debt ceiling raised.
Yeah, that's interesting also because the president did mention, and you said earlier, in neither plan does it appear that there's actually going to be tax increases on the rich, and yet the president still keeps hammering away on that. That strikes me as a little bit political. He knows it's probably not going to be in there. Why does he keep pushing it like that?
Well, you know, I think the president would still rather see a larger deficit reduction plan than we currently have. And the only way you can get to greater deficit reduction with any level of fairness is by really increasing revenues. And so I think he continues to put that out there to the American public in hopes that the folks on the other side of the aisle will eventually understand that that's where we need to be. Well,
interestingly, there's a new poll out today that indicates that most Americans are, in fact, with the president on this particular mixture. They feel like a mixture should be done. Do you think that this is it? Once you get this debt ceiling deal, assuming, fingers crossed, that you do, is that all until you get past the 2012 elections, that this will not be, again, something that gets brought up? Or are you coming back to this discussion about increased revenue and tax hikes?
To be honest with you, although I think it should be part of the ongoing discussion, I don't believe it will be. So I think you're correct in assuming that if we get beyond this in the short term and we don't revisit it in 2012, that we will not see any serious discussions till after the 2012 elections.
Well, right. And so speaking of the 2012 elections, you know, the American Crossroads, or Crossroads GPS, pardon me, which is this group that formed with the assistance of Karl Rove, has you in its crosshairs along with some other folks who I think are moderates, mostly on this. They targeted you before the cut, cap, balance vote, and I was just wondering what your response is to that.
Well, you know, I don't pay a lot of attention to those kinds of commercials or those kinds of attacks. We have a hard enough job that we're trying to do here without being distracted by something of that nature. I think the people in my district understand where I am. I've been very consistent about it, what we need to do, how we need to do it, and I think my moderate record is appealing to the majority of folks in the district.
Right, because we saw the NRCC, which is the Republicans' Congressional Campaign Committee arm, also hit you this morning for fundraising. I mean, there is business as usual going on in Washington while you guys try and get a deal, right? People are raising money. People are talking about other topics, maybe. I don't know. Are they? Are they talking about anything else down there?
Well, clearly, our colleagues on the other side of the aisle continue to bring up pieces of legislation. So we're going to the floor to vote. We're going to committee hearings on a wide variety of issues. This morning I was in an Armed Services Committee hearing. Tomorrow we have a Small Business Committee hearing. So business is going on while this debate is occurring simultaneously. And
just your best, before I let you go, your best guess. Are we getting a deal, or is this country going to default?
My belief is that we will not default and that we will have a deal before August 2nd.
Well, Congressman, hopefully you're right. You know, so far it's not looking good and it's not been pretty. But I want to thank you very much for your time. Hopefully we will be seeing you again soon. Until then, be well.
Thanks very much. You too. Bye-bye.
Bye.